this is John Kohler with GrowingYourGreens.com. Today we have another exciting episode for you here in my backyard garden. And today we're going to talk about something really cool. Something above me, you know. No, not the stars, the sky, the planes flying above, or even the chemtrails, actually, luckily. I don't see any chemtrails today. But what we're going to talk about is something even more important for those of you guys that live in harsh desert climates that regularly exceed 100 degrees in the summer. And that's where really the shade cloth is going to really come in handy, right? For those of you guys that live in places where it might be 70s, 80s in the daytimes, in the summertime, turn off this video now, save your guys some time, unless actually you want to learn about maybe how a plant works, right, to some extent, and also learn more about, you know, my experiments with shade cloth and my beliefs about them, all right? So I guess the first thing is that, you know, coming to the desert from California, I never use the shade cloth in California. We have a nice, really mild climate. I mean, yeah, a couple days might hit 90, maybe a few 100. But like, you don't need shade cloth for most of the summer. It's like in the 80s and it's really nice. And the sun intensity is not that hard either, right? So if you guys live in one of those places, don't waste your money on shade cloth. Now, if you guys live in somewhere where it's over 100 degrees on a regular basis, this is definitely the video you guys are going to want to watch, because I'm going to share my opinions with you. Anyways, the first thing is, when I first moved to the desert, I visited a lot of different farms and places growing things. Some places grew in full sun, some places grew under pretty good shade actually, and I'm like, what do I do? So I reached out and interviewed people that are growing, and one of the people that came up was the tomato lady. And tomato lady, she swears against shade cloth. And she explained how shade cloth works, how it could prevent, you know, the plant from, you know, photosynthesizing and growing as much as it can. And I was a younger and a more impressionable guy at that point. And I was like, all right, well, she's been doing it here 20 years. Her tomato plants look amazing. She doesn't shade. I'm not going to shade either. Nature doesn't shade stuff. Well, hey, a lot of things don't grow in the desert either. So anyways, I was maybe a little younger and maybe a little more naive, and I'm like, I'm not going to shade anything. And so then I put out videos. I'm not shading anything. Shade cloth is for wimps. You got to grow healthy plants and they can take the sun. And yes, so, you know, I did that for many years, and things grew pretty good actually without the shade cloth. But then, like, the plants would grow pretty good without shade cloth, but I did notice their nutrient needs were a bit more. And then, but the other thing was that when I was out working in the garden without the shade cloth, I was hot. I was sweating bricks, man. And so then one year my plants were just like, maybe let's experiment with some shade cloth. Let's see how I could get better growth. Because I'm always experimenting, and I want to encourage you guys to always experiment as well. And so I put up some shade cloth actually, and I noticed that, you know, I had better, maybe things didn't grow as big, but I still had fairly good yields, right? Because I know some of the yields, although your yields in full sun may be better, the other thing with full sun is that you're also going to get burned. So a lot of my fruiting crops tended to burn in the full sun. So the tomato lady actually put shade cloth over each fruit in some instances, or over patches of fruit if the leaves don't cover the fruits to prevent all the burn. And so you could have losses. So anyways, I put up shade cloth, just a black shade cloth, and it worked all right. It wasn't really working like as well as I had thought, but it did allow me to work outside in temperatures, and it was much cooler, right? And that was maybe like a year or two ago. I put up the shade cloth, started experimenting with that, because one year literally some of the heat and maybe wiped out some of my plants, like a lot of my plants, and I was like, I'd rather use some shade cloth, maybe have a little bit, sacrifice a little bit of production to have plants that stay alive during the whole season. And so anyways, that's the story up till now. And the black shade cloth, I wasn't quite super happy with it. For the most part, you know, I felt that it actually, just as a personal note, I felt personally that it kind of like shaded out too much light, although I did get a 40% shade cloth, which, you know, I guess the least amount of shade is 30 and 40. And if you got something like dogs or pets and they're staying outside, you should have like a 70% shade cloth for them so they don't overheat. But then even better than a black shade cloth is the Aluminate shade cloth, which is actually shade cloth, but then also it has basically reflective properties. So I've been using this, you know, as a mulch. I use a reflective mulch last year I experimented with. Overall, I liked it because it did hold more soil moisture. But anyways, there's a lot to this reflective technology that I've known about that they use in attics, you know, to keep your attic cooler and all this kind of stuff. So reflective technology, in my opinion, totally works. It's totally legit. So this year I'm like, well, hey, let's go for some Illuminate shade cloth. It's not only a shade cloth at 40%, or you could get it in various levels of degrees, but it also reflects the heat energy, you know. And I'll stop there for a minute, and I want to explain how photosynthesis works, actually. So photosynthesis is like a recipe, and it's a recipe for the plants to basically take the energy of the sun, combine some other ingredients, and then basically make nutrients or plant sugars or produce chemicals inside the plant that they could then do different things with. Make your fruits, make your leaves, send it down to feed the microbes in the soil, all kinds of different stuff. But anyways, the formula for the photosynthesis to occur is, number one, you need a light, right? So the light needs to hit it. If it's in darkness, photosynthesis will not occur, of course. You know, and then the other thing to remember is that too little light is not good. Photosynthesis will not be at its peak. And too much light is not good either, because then there's basically an overload of the recipe, as you guys will learn about. The next thing that is needed is the heat, right? If the heat is too low, then photosynthesis is not going to properly occur. And if heat is too high, photosynthesis will not properly occur either. Why? Well, this is because of the enzymes. Enzymes catalyze many reactions in our bodies, in our foods, and also in our plants. So, you know, enzymes work in a certain temperature range. Below that range, they're maybe working really slow, and above that range, they basically are deactivated. They're not going to work. So here's the thing. So the heat, if the heat gets above like 104 degrees, enzyme reactions are not happening in your plants. So that means that if you're living in an environment where it's above 104 degrees, you want to try to keep that down so that you could have a photosynthesis period of time longer in the day. Like, for example, in the middle of the day, plants may shut down the photosynthesis because the light may be too intense, or it could be too hot, especially here in the desert. So what that means, consequently, is maybe in the morning, from, you know, the time the sun comes up to maybe about, you know, 10 or 11, photosynthesis is going along, the plant's happy because it hasn't gotten too hot yet, the sun intensity is not too much. And then in the middle of the day, 11, 12, 1, 2, 3, maybe it's like way too hot and the sun intensity is way too much, so the plant basically shuts down. So now basically the plant's taking a siesta, and hopefully the plant's going to stay alive because it's not too hot and you do have some moisture in the soil, so the plant can transpire and keep itself cool. And then at the end of the day, between, like, I don't know, 4 or 5 until sundown, then the plant's, okay, I'm back to photosynthesizing again because it's kind of cool, or, you know, this light intensity is not too much. And, you know, you can, in some ways, control the light intensity and the heat. But the other part of the recipe, and this is the third part of the recipe, is the CO2 levels. So, you know, cannabis growers, growing inside in a controlled environment can totally monitor the CO2 levels and pump more CO2 in if they want to get higher levels of the photosynthesis occurring. Of course, outside, I do not recommend trying to do that. You're fighting a losing battle. So you can't control that. So CO2 can be a limiting factor, even if you have the temperature right and you have the most sun energy. You will have probably deficiency in CO2. That's actually going to not cause the whole process to work. So it's a three-prong approach. So, you know, I want to try to control the two prongs that I can't control CO2 really easily. And then the other two is the light intensity and the heat. You know, if those are too high or too low, not going to work. And that's why winter gardens tend not to kind of grow as quickly, because it's a bit too cold, not as much light, and also the soil microbes, that's a whole nother topic, not working fast. So that's why your plants don't grow super fast. Anyways, in the desert, the problem is the light intensity and the heat, right? And so now I want to share with you guys actually the Illuminate shade cloth that I purchased. And also we're going to do lux testing, which actually measures the light intensity. And we're going to do temperature testing that shows the temperature of the plants and the soil and all these things in different areas of my garden, right? We're going to show like straight up full sun, no shade cloth, how much, you know, what's the temperature and what's the lux. And then we're going to go under my Illuminate shade cloth, what's the temperature, what's the lux, and then we're going to go under my black 40% shade cloth, show you guys the temperature and the lux, and then I'm going to come back at you with a summary. So just wanted to take a moment out of this episode today to remind you guys that we're still doing, for a limited time, the Growing Your Greens t-shirt fundraiser. So if you want to support me and my work, you could definitely buy a Growing Your Greens t-shirt that directly supports me to allow me to continue to make my educational videos. Plus you definitely get a really cool organic cotton Growing Your Greens t-shirt. So yeah, check the link down below, compassiontees.com. Link is also at the end of this video. So when you're done watching the video, click over and support me while you still can, and also get a cool organic t-shirt at the same time. So now I'm in a part of my garden where I'm getting full sun. These are my 4-foot round raised beds, and as you guys can see in this bed I have all peppers planted. It's I think around maybe 2 o'clock in the daytime, super hot, sun's blaring down. All the leaves are green, although some of the leaves are kind of dipping down, which means like maybe it's like too much sun for them, but they're doing pretty good. But what I want to do next for you guys, actually, we're going to go ahead and measure the lux. And this meter measures like the light, basically. And then we're going to take an infrared thermometer and we're going to measure a few things in the garden here, some temperatures, right? So if I just hold this up and we'll kind of point it a little bit of an angle to the light. Looks like this lux meter is reading about 766, 64, 63, 65. So around 760, and that's times 100. So, you know, that's a pretty big number. I'll let you guys do the math. So that's what this is in full sun, right? The lux, right? We're going to put this guy away, and now we're going to go ahead and measure the temperature, right? So here's my infrared thermometer, and if we just go ahead and I'm pointing at the ground from my level, the ground, if you guys look at that, is approximately 120 degrees on the ground is the temperature. 121, 123. That's pretty doggone hot. Don't burn your dog's paws on the ground. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and measure a leaf. So we're going to get a leaf measurement of a leaf here that's in full sun. I got the little pointer on there. All right, so you guys can see the leaf measurement is approximately 87 degrees in full sun right there. The other thing I want to point out is under full sun situation, we got the temperature and the lux and leaf temperature. I'm still getting flowering and budding and fruiting on my peppers here. But the thing I'm also getting, if you guys look at this, I'm getting sunburn. So although I may have good production, you know, I may also get sunburn, whereas literally this is just like the flesh of the pepper is burned, so this whole area has to be cut out. I'll still eat the other areas of the pepper. So, you know, that's one of the reasons why actually you might not want to grow in full sun. Anyways, next let's head over under my aluminate where I'm going to certainly be cooler, and so my plants. So now I'm walking underneath my aluminate, which is really nice, and let's see, we're going to go ahead and do a lux meter reading. So we kind of measure it like this. You know, it's times 100 once again, but look at this. The reading is now at around 412, depending on how I tilt the meter. 400. I just say around 400, you know, versus like a 700 earlier. So there's a, you know, still good lux, maybe a loss of maybe 40 to 45%, which is actually what the shade cloth should be. It's also cooler though a lot. And now let's more importantly measure the temperature of the ground. So now we're going to measure the ground on this side of the garden, and it was 120 degrees, and yes, this is covered with mulch instead of, you know, just the dirt. 120, but on this side it's about 96 degrees. So man, that's a good significant cooling. I guess the next thing I want to do is let's go ahead and measure a leaf that's in full sun underneath the aluminate. So now we're measuring a leaf underneath the aluminate, and as you guys can see, it's like 75.5 degrees or 74. I mean, that's a good 10 degrees cooler than the leaf on the other side of the garden. And here's the thing, you know, I'll let you guys know that right around 70 degrees, or maybe 76, maybe 70 to 76, right around that temperature is the optimal temperature for photosynthesis to occur. So you guys saw that the aluminate made a significant decrease in the temperature and the lux, and you know, I think that's a good thing. But now I want to show you guys actually this black shade cloth. I had this up because actually this area I'm putting the aluminate up because I wasn't happy with the black shade cloth any further after doing my testing. So as you guys can see, just in this area here, The Lux is 800 times 800 times 100 lux. And then if we just go here in the shade, if we look at that, look at the number. Whoa, John, it's still 800. But the thing is, yes, it might be 800, but it's not 800 times 100. It's 800, or in this case 1,000 or 1,200 times 10. So that's a significant decrease. So it's times 10 instead of times 100. That's like a big difference in significantly more shade. And I think this much shade is probably hurting the plants because it's just much too much shade in my opinion. All right. Next, let's go ahead and test temperature of the ground here under this. And the temperature in the ground here under the black shade is 83 degrees. So that's definitely also pretty cool. And let's go ahead and check a leaf here. These are not quite under full sun anymore because the sun has gone out of the path, because I was going to do this about 10 minutes ago. But anyways, underneath here, the temperature is 76, 77 degrees, so that's pretty much comparable to the Aluminet cloth. So as you guys just saw, the full sun was blaring, intense, super hot. Probably not the best idea, although it can work because I've grown in full sun for a few years and I was doing that great. And then I put up the black shade as you guys just saw, and then in my opinion it shaded too much. I mean, this is just gardener's intuition that I had, and sometimes your intuition may be right. And so listen to it. And then I got, I had the IR meter, and then I got a lux meter to test, and sure enough, this guy really blocks significant amount of light despite being 40% shade. And the other thing I want to let you guys know is that the percentage of shade is dependent on how the shade cloth is constructed, and I'll show you guys that in a minute. But anyways, I think the happy medium is the Aluminet, right? Because of the fact that when I tested this area earlier, when it was under direct sun, the leaf temperature was much hotter, although when I tested it just now, it was pretty much the same. Because basically the black will absorb the heat energy, and if I test it over there, I mean, because the way that I have it, anyways, I couldn't get the exact test I wanted to show you guys, but trust me on this. It was still hotter under this area, and some of my plants in this area would still end up wilting out in the middle of the day despite being on the same watering plan as the shade cloth I have with the Aluminet. So, I think that the Aluminet definitely helps to reduce not only the temperature, which is probably the most important factor, because if it's too hot, the photosynthesis will not occur. So we want to get that temperature down as much as we can. So I'm quite impressed on how much the Aluminet shade cloth is able to do that. It does reduce the amount of light intensity, which I think is a good thing, because, once again, in like most things in life, too much is not good, too little is not good. You could be like, but John, you could never have too much money. Trust me, too much money is not good. Some of them rich, famous peoples are committing suicide and all this stuff because they are just not happy. Too much money is not good. Just the right amount, that's good, right? All right, so anyways, you could have too much or too little sun energy, and I think the Aluminet, for my specific purposes in the desert, it basically brings my heat or my light energy from being too high to just in the good range. And this is just from my personal feeling and from my, what I'd say, connection with my plants and looking at my plants and kind of feeling and seeing how they look and see how happy they are. Some people might say your plants talk to you. I would say that I could tell how they're feeling by looking at them and, examining them and checking them out. Yes, I love to check out my plants, especially their nice little fruits, especially the melons that are coming on right now. But yeah, so I think they're a lot happier. Plus, the other thing is that the temperature, I mean, that's a no-brainer. I can't really tell you like what lux the plants need, because I'm not like into all that stuff. I'm just a normal guy just trying to grow some food in his backyard and trying to make all this scientific stuff easy for you guys to understand, because I didn't go to school for biology or plants or nothing like that. But I will say that the heat energy is probably the worst thing. The heat is definitely a bad factor, and if it gets too hot, photosynthesis is not going to occur as rapidly. Your plants are not going to grow as much, and the other thing is you're going to get the burn. The burn is not caused by the light. Light and the heat are basically wavelengths. And, you could have light without heat, or you could have light with the heat. So I'm glad that the Illuminate basically reflects some of the heat to keep it cool underneath, and, does a significantly better job when I tested earlier than even the black shade cloth here. And so now I want to talk really quick about Illuminate for you guys. This is the Illuminate shade cloth that actually I happen to buy. There's a few places you could get this, and it kind of stinks actually. Good thing it's outside airing out. But basically it's actually Illuminate shade, and I don't know if the website is on here. They don't actually have the website on here. But anyways, you guys could get this stuff. The one I got actually from on Amazon. They'll ship it 2-day Prime if you need it ASAP. Otherwise, there's another website. I think it's like it's illuminateshade.com actually is the website. Amazon or illuminateshade.com may be cheaper. The prices can fluctuate, so check them both. That being said, Illuminate is actually a trademark of a company in the United States. They created this technology of basically reflective shade cloth. And in my opinion, but I don't know for sure, this is not the true Illuminate product, that's officially trademarked. I believe, and don't quote me on this, this is actually a Chinese product. And the reason why I think this is because the price is about half of the price of what Illuminate should cost. And just because you're paying full price for Illuminate doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get the one made in America. It might be some Chinese knockoff that somebody's just taking a larger profit margin on. So if you are buying Illuminate and you do want it to last, I would encourage you guys probably to spend more money, because that stuff's probably going to last longer than the cheap stuff, the Chinese import stuff that I'm getting. That being said, I'm going to see how long this lasts. I'll give you guys updates. And plus, the other thing is I didn't want to spend like a lot of money to just if it was just not going to work or not going to help me. But now I'm confident that it'll work. And I mean, once this deteriorates or if it goes bad, then I'll get the real stuff that hopefully will last a lot longer. So yeah, so once again, I recommend, if you guys live in a desert climate, I do not recommend regular shade cloth. I would recommend the Illuminate. The shade cloth, from my testing, basically did not give enough light energy, and then also kept the heat too hot. So yeah, that's pretty much the summary of this episode. Links down below if you guys want to buy this. Oh, and then some of the Illuminate I got actually had some defects in it, so I didn't contact them yet because I just wanted to get them up. So I'm going to actually take pictures of it and then contact the company and see if they're going to fix it or replace it, because I'm kind of concerned that it's going to fray or unravel. And these things ain't too cheap. This is a 7x8, and it was like 30 bucks. And then actually I got a really good deal on the larger ones. I got like 12x18s for $59, but then they raised the price up, and that was all that was including the free shipping. Oh, and then the last thing I'm doing today is, so I just got this new Illuminate because the area I'm sitting in is going to get the black cloth removed. And then I'm basically going to have a nice section of 7 feet by 16 feet over these raised beds, including my peppers behind me. Actually, I'm getting some burn on that pepper over there. And then my tree collard, so they'll have a little bit nicer time and hopefully be able to photosynthesize more and grow more for me and produce more. And in the end, that's really what I'm after. So actually, I'm going to get this up and I'll come back at you with the closing thought, the closing shot and my thoughts. So as you guys can see, I got my Chinese made, in my opinion, Illuminate shade cloth up over the last half of my garden. Basically, I had a 7 feet wide span, like width, and basically to continue on the line of the other half of the garden I already had done. And then basically I had a 7 feet until my structure. So basically on one side I have the structure I built, and basically to hang one of these shade cloths really easy. You just get these connectors. You gotta usually get these online. You can't find these at a local hardware store. And then you just buy these are 1-inch connectors, 1-inch EMT conduit at like Home Depot or Lowe's or whatever hardware store. And then just connect in here and then just screw these tight. You'll make a real nice frame. I got the bottoms on there, so I basically buried them under the ground and put them underneath blocks so they don't blow away. And then that makes the frame for my main setup. And then this setup, basically one side is basically pinned to an overhang or structure in the backyard existing, and the other side actually just goes to a block wall where I just basically put some anchors into the block wall to hold that up, so it's nice and tight. And the problem is that instead of getting one continuous piece with no edges. I want to get finished pieces, so I do encourage you guys for the long lastingness of your aluminate. Get the ones that are already got the edges on them, because otherwise if the edges are not on there, then they have a bigger chance of snagging, fraying, ripping, and then there goes your expensive aluminate. So these ones are all like you know, prefabricated with grommets already installed, and then I basically got two 7 by 8 foot, and then tied together the them at the 7 foot width to make that 16 feet long. That basically goes all the way to the end pretty securely, except in the middle. If you guys look closely, it's kind of like open. So I like tie wrap the tarps together, or the aluminate, and then I need to probably put some like safety pins and make sure it stays fully closed. Oh look, there's some birds. So yeah, so this also may protect my garden from bird attack from the top, although they can still get in the sides. I'm really curious to see how my tree collards do under the shade. It's going to definitely keep them cooler, and it'll probably keep them in a higher state and level of photosynthesis, which means hopefully they're going to grow faster, because generally I've noticed in the summer times the growth slows down. They stay alive, yes, but the growth, they don't grow quite as fast as like the spring, you know, or the fall when they really love the weather. And yeah, I mean, they're creeping by in the winter as well, all year round. So I think my summary is you learned how to mount them. That was important for me to say. And then the other thing I want to say is that every plant, you know, needs a certain environmental climate and environmental aspects, right? And so the plants that I'm growing underneath my shade cloth, you know, are the fruiting crops that are going to benefit by this shade. You know, some other crops like Malabar spinach, like water spinach, like I wouldn't waste shade cloth on them because they'll do fine without the shade cloth. So I'm not saying like you always need shade cloth for everything. No, you need to have the proper amount of shade, you know, if you want to get the optimal level of photosynthesis for your plants to grow the fastest, get the biggest, and yield more fruit for you. You know, obviously, if you're in some place that's already pretty warm, you know, in the summer times you want to grow some lettuce, maybe some aluminate shade cloth over one of your beds will just help drop that temperature just enough so that lettuce doesn't want to bolt faster. So I encourage you guys to experiment, you know, get a small piece of aluminate, put it over a small section, and try to grow crops that you may not otherwise be able to grow. You know, it goes both ways. You can try to grow cooler things than normal, or in the desert here, I'm just trying to keep my plants cool and under optimal production, you know, for the full season. And the other thing I'll say is if you're you know, if you have more labor than time, I don't have a lot of time, you know, I would prefer actually just to put this shade cloth up during the peak of the day, so it reduces the peak of the day hit of temperature and sunlight, right? And then I would pull it off the other times of the day. That being said, I'm not pulling this up and down every single day. Maybe if you got some motorized thing or something, you could do it easily. Unfortunately, I didn't set mine up like that. Plus, you know, I travel a lot. So this is just going to stay up the full summer, but I'm quite confident because it lets a lot of light through, and I'm pretty sure I'm going to do fine. So I'll give you guys updates as the season goes on, let you guys know how my new aluminate works out. So far, so good. I think it's probably the best shade cloth I've ever got so far, and definitely, I believe, and from what I've seen, it definitely is going to help my production this year. So anyways, if you guys enjoyed this episode about the aluminate shade cloth, hey, please be sure to give me a thumbs up. Also be sure to share this video with somebody else that lives in Las Vegas or Phoenix or other deserts or other hot, dry areas around the country, because I think a shade cloth can definitely help. You know, and other places, you know, maybe it'll help you grow plants that you might not be able to normally grow in the summertime because it is too hot. Also, be sure to click that subscribe button right down below so you don't miss out on any of my new and upcoming episodes that are coming out every 3 to 4 days, and remember, where I'll share what we'll be learning on my YouTube channel. And finally, be sure to check my past episodes. Oh my God, my past episodes are a wealth of knowledge, more knowledge contained within my episodes than anybody else that makes videos online, because I go through the gamut of showing you guys all kinds of cool stuff. So yeah, check my past episodes, over 1,300 episodes at this time. So with that, my name is John Kohler with GrowingYourGreens.com. We'll see you next time, and until then, remember, keep on growing.